CRM was supposed to improve customer relationships. Instead, it's shorthand for can't resolve much. Which means you may have sunk a fortune into software that just bounces customer issues around but never actually solves them. On the ServiceNow AI platform, CRM stands for something better. With AI built into one platform, customers aren't mired in endless loops of automated indifference. They get what they need, when they need it. Bad CRM was then. This is ServiceNow.
EVO.
Welcome back to Criminal Mischief with Carolyn and Brandon. You're listening to episode 152, a conversation with retired FBI Special Agent Jerri Williams. Hey, Criminal Mischief Nation. If you've ever been interested in spotting a scammer, don't go anywhere. This week, we're sharing my conversation with retired FBI Special Agent Jerri Williams. So Jerri worked major fraud investigations where she learned only too well the complicated schemes and deceptions con artists employ to steal other people's money. And she's going to give us all those details. Plus, she's going to share insights into how she cultivated sources. Something I didn't realize was a requirement of all agents in the FBI. And she's also going to tell us what it was like being a female agent in a very male-dominated field. And what's interesting, too, about Jerri is after nearly 30 years as a special agent, she pivoted to writing crime fiction and hosting the podcast, The FBI Case File Review, where she interviews retired FBI agents about their high-profile cases. Hi, Jerri. It is so great to have you on the show, but let's start off with you. What's your name and title? How you'd like me to refer to you in the show?
Yeah, I'm Jerri Williams, and of course I'm a retired FBI agent, author, and podcaster.
Okay, cool. So we went through a lot to get to this point. We had some scheduling issues. There might be some kind of interruptions with, of course, Murphy's Law, right? I think you were having a technical, like somebody's doing some workaround. So hopefully we're on track to doing a wonderful interview. But I said that I'd reached out to you because I saw a post of yours on social media. You have a podcast. And remind me the name of the podcast?
It's called FBI Case File Review. And my 10-year anniversary is coming up in January.
So you've been doing podcasting before everybody was doing podcasting, right?
Oh, I can't make that claim, but I definitely started when podcasts were really getting popular, and that was in January of 2016 is when I started. But podcasts have been around since 2004, 2005, so I can't say I was an early bird, but I was in at the start of the true crime advance into podcast.
So now you had 26 years in the FBI. Right?
Yes.
What tell me a little bit about what brought you there.
Well, I was a juvenile probation officer in lovely Newport News, Virginia. I had absolutely no interest or thought about the FBI. Now, my roommate in college, when she graduated, she actually joined the Baltimore Police Department. So, it was something that, I knew she was interested in. And so that was the possibility of things that could be done with a psychology degree, which I had at the time. But I wasn't thinking about the FBI. But then I saw a newsletter, and the FBI was actively recruiting women and minorities. This is back in 1982. I don't even know if you were born back then, but back in 1982. And they were looking for women and they were looking for minorities. And I thought, let me give a call and see what the recruiter has to say. And I don't know what happened, but 6 months later, I was walking into the FBI Academy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what did your family think about you joining the FBI? I mean, that's a pretty big thing.
Yeah, it is. And again, I had never talked about it before. So, and nobody really knew what the FBI did and who they were. And so they were proud because they knew how difficult it was to get into the FBI. So I made it in. They weren't, I guess they were holding judgment as to how things were going to work out, but they were proud.
So what do you think made them choose you out of all of the candidates that they get? Like what is it about you that because from what I know about the FBI is they're looking for people who are attorneys or accountants, people with a cross section of experience, um not just oh I want to be a detective.
Right, right. Well, I had majored in psychology. I think maybe one of the things that was very interesting to them was that I grew up as an Air Force brat, and I had lived all over the world, Morocco, Germany, England, France, and all over the U.S., in Washington State and Spokane, and Massachusetts and Maine, Washington, D.C. And so I really had this ability to adapt and, speak to people and understand people. And I think that really came through to them that I was somebody who could go into a situation, not know what was going on, and be confident that I would be able to figure it out. And I think that came through, my personality. I was young at the time. I was 25, and I was working a very demanding job where I was, involved with these juveniles that were engaged in criminal activity, and taking that role. Sometimes almost a parental role because their parents wouldn't, trying to get them straight. My job required me to travel all over the state of Virginia to group homes and placement centers and facilities where these kids were. So, I had that responsibility too, even at the age of 25, of traveling around representing, the juvenile probation office and in these facilities, and talking to these kids and trying to engage with them in order for them to eventually come back to the community. And so I just think that, my experiences is my experience, growing up, and then and my work experiences, they really could see that, this is somebody who would be good for this job.
So now, which did they assign you to? Did like what was that? And did you have to go
This,
through boot camp? And what was that process like for you?
yeah, yeah. So I was hired as a special agent with the FBI, and so I went to the FBI Academy. At the time, it was 16 weeks of training. We were trained in the academics. What legally could we do, and what under the Constitution we're not allowed to do. I was trained in interviewing skills and investigative skills. We also had physical fitness, running and the pull-ups and the push-ups and boxing and defensive tactics. And then, of course, we were trained in firearms. At the time, this is going back a ways. We were trained in the revolver, the shotgun, and the rifle. And so, yeah, I did all of that during that 16 weeks of training. And at the end, I went back to Virginia for 6 months, and then I was reassigned, and I was transferred all the way across the country. And my first real office was Sacramento.
Wow. So what was that like? You mentioned the call was in part because they were, reaching out to minorities and women. As a Black young woman, what was that like for you in this new world? I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, I actually was either the 22nd or the 23rd Black female hired by the FBI. And at the time, there may have been maybe 200, 300 women throughout the country. And as far as agents total, there were about 9 or 10,000. And so women and minorities were just sprinkled here and there, because you got to understand, at that time there were 57 offices. So even if I say there were 22 or 23 Black women and 2 or 300 females, they were sprinkled all around the country. And so when you got to an office like Sacramento, where there were women, but I was the only Black agent, male or female, and get this, I was the only Black employee. They had a night clerk that worked from midnight to 8, But other than that, during the day, I was the only representative, as far as an African American employee, let alone agent in the office. And so, yeah, there were some times that it, there were some challenges at times where people weren't necessarily ready, for that.
And did you know that going in? I mean, I would assume based on your experience, you thought that that was probably going to happen.
No, I was not. Because again, was an Air Force. I was an Air Force brat. I'm very able to adapt and to adjust. But I lived in Newport News, Virginia, which had a very, a good representative of minorities and even in the office. So, no, I wasn't quite prepared to get to Sacramento and really, really be the only one. And it was time again, the FBI was actively, seeking more women, seeking more minorities. And so there may have been an attitude at the time, may have been. There definitely was an attitude at the time. Who's this coming in? And, are they qualified? And, do we really need them? They're taking the space, we're taking the space of a male who may need to support his family and children, and they're taking up that space. And so there was definitely challenging attitudes back in those early 80s.
Well, and I guess it goes back to the resilience, all that testing that they had done that you'd passed, where, you lean into that
Yes,
big time, right?
definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
And I experienced some of that also at the academy. So yes, by the time I got there, I was prepared for definitely gender role issues that I saw even at the academy.
hmm. So talk about your 26-year career because
Yeah,
you have it sounds like I loved it because you worked fraud and you were amazed by the schemes and that with a gun you could steal a couple $100, but with a lie you could
you can steal millions.
I love that.
Absolutely. And with true crime being so big, most people think about crime, violent crime. They think about, I just did an episode on sex trafficking. I've done many episodes on, violent gangs, but fraud and corruption is really the basis of crime because all of those things that people are doing, it involves their greed or their desire to have something that they don't deserve. And that's what fraud is about. Fraud is basically getting something of value based on a lie or deception. And it is probably one of the most basic criminal schemes and violations that there is. And it's the foundation of most crime. And so being able to work fraud and seeing these cases and dealing with the people, the fraudsters and the con artists, really was, for me, a very, very exciting violation to work. Now, there are some agents who would rather stick a needle in their eye than to work fraud cases because they are very, very complex at times.
So what did you learn? I'm a big human behavior nut where it's like, part of the true crime pull for me is like that why we do what we do, you know? And for people who are listening, what can they take away from what you've learned about these schemers because usually they're narcissistic, they're sociopaths, so you don't really see them coming, it feels like a lot of the times. People that are really good, especially with white collar crimes, I would imagine, because you know they're not using a weapon, they're using their personality and their ability to con. So talk a little bit about what you've learned and how people can learn from your wisdom.
Yeah. I think there are two types of fraudsters. They're the fraudster that you were talking about who intentionally is going out to deceive people because they're sociopaths and they don't care. You have it, they want it, they're going to take it. But there's also a group of people who are still just as, need to suffer the consequences, but they kind of fall into it. And they might be in a situation where I'm thinking about a woman who's working in an office and her boss doesn't treat her very well, and she's responsible for the books. And she decides that one day to take just a little bit of a tip, an extra bonus for herself. And the next thing she knows, she's taken 1 million or 2 or 3 million from this company. And so for her, it was a matter of wanting something that didn't belong to her, but it was also a matter of being in a place where she had access to this money. And so it really is like a cycle of you having this desire for something and then not having a roadblock to stop you from taking it. Some people go around that roadblock intentionally, but there are some people that there is none. And next thing they know, they've done something that they know is illegal, and then they do whatever they can to, get people not to find out what they've done. And so it really is a different mindset each time you are assigned a case and you look into, the motivation behind it. At the end, it doesn't make a difference. I'm just gathering the information. And if the person committed the crime, it's up to the judge to look at their motivation and decide if he's going to let that, affect the way that the person is sentenced. But it is interesting to see how somebody what they were able to say to themselves to make it okay to take somebody else's money, to take somebody else's property. It really is amazing.
It's such an interesting piece that you brought up because I know that you review, part of what you do now is kind of review movies and TV shows to like identify what's kind of real in terms of the FBI from your experience and then what's, Hollywood, right? So like,
Right.
I don't know if you've been watching Black Rabbit, that new
I
Netflix.
haven't started yet. I love Jason Bateman, so and Jude Law, so I am gonna watch it. But I haven't started watching it yet. Maybe this weekend.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is we're watching it right now, but what's so frustrating is how they justify every turn, like to your point with the receptionist who's in charge of the books. It's like things come up and then they just justify what they're doing and it just snowballs. And it's like, is that what you found more often than the first scenario where people just they see something that you have and they want it and they'll take it, where it's like they don't start off thinking I'm going to steal, but just things just go awry so fast. And then they just, because that's what it seems like. Was that a majority of your cases where it's like they were just in an opportunity, they were treated like crap, they're like, did they justify it? I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I think it's probably half and half
Okay.
because I worked many types of different economic crime violations. But here are two that I can talk about that are different. You might have an advance fee scheme. An advance fee scheme is when somebody says, hey, I'm going to do something for you, but in advance of me doing that, you need to pay. So maybe it's a loan broker, and I'm going to help you. You have a business that's failing. You need capital, but the bank won't loan you any money. I'm a loan broker. I'm going to find you a financier who's going to be able to help you with your, gain some capital, help give you a loan. The difference is there are some people who know they have no means or ability. They don't know any financiers. They just want you to give them money. So they take your money in advance and they spend it on themselves. So that is definitely somebody who intentionally went after your money, and that's a fraudster. Then you might have somebody that's a Ponzi schemer. I work Ponzi schemes, and they had a legitimate business and they were bringing in money. And for some reason, the business started to fail. And so, in order to to keep that business afloat, they needed to get more money. And so in order to do that, they may have lied a little bit or told somebody something deceptive in order to get them to invest in their business, thinking that once the business got back on its feet, they would be able to pay that person back. And it didn't happen. And so they kept having to get more money to get more investors. And then next thing you know, it collapses because there's no Ponzi scheme that is ever going to be able to stay afloat, because you have to keep getting more money and more money coming in order to pay the people that have been investing in you. And so it falls apart. The advanced fee schemer, the loan broker, he intentionally started his business to deceive everyone. The person who was a Ponzi schemer, it was initially a real business that just kind of fell apart. But at the end, they both know what they're doing is wrong, and they were both taking advantage of people who listened to what they said and invested or gave them money.
One of the things I was really surprised by is on your website, jerrywilliams.com, right?
Yes.
Um, you said that every FBI agent has to cultivate sources.
Yes.
I did not
Yes.
know that. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that is part of our performance appraisal, because FBI agents and any person in law enforcement, they're not directly involved in the criminal activity. So to learn what's going on and to get an idea about the trends and what's happening and who's involved, the only way that we can do that is by talking to people who are actually engaged in that activity. The only thing that we can do to learn more is to gather intelligence, whether that's intelligence by looking online at activities, or actually developing human intelligence by getting people and having them cooperate with your investigation. And so it's extremely important part of being an investigator as a whole, but definitely the FBI makes sure that you understand that by making it part of your performance appraisal. So everybody is expected to have a number of human sources to be able to provide them information about the particular violation that they're working, and gathering information and intelligence for other things that the office is engaged in.
And so how would you go about getting your sources? Like how what did that look like?
Well, one of the easiest parts of getting a source or getting an informant or whatever confidential source, whatever you want to call them, is when you are out doing your interviews. And so maybe you are investigating this particular person, but you've had an opportunity to talk to somebody that you don't have anything on, but and asking you about the other person or the other activity, you realize that they may be in a position to assist you. And so it may just be talking to them and developing some type of relationship, rapport, where eventually you ask them if they would be interested in cooperating or being a source. And that could be just out of the goodness of their heart because they're good citizens, or it could be because, you are going to make some type of monetary arrangement with them in order to pay them for the information that they have. Another way, of course, is the ones you hear about on TV where somebody's already jammed up on some type of charge, and in order to mitigate their exposure, their charges, they're willing to cooperate with the understanding that that agent and that federal prosecutor will make the judge aware of their cooperation, and that the judge will take that into account when a sentence is given for that person. So there are many ways, but we're always looking and always wondering, would this person, be a good source of information for me in the future? And
I didn't realize that you could pay them. I mean, it makes sense, but like
oh,
it's very much money. Like what kind of money are we talking about here?
Well, it really depends. I mean, some very important sources and very important places are paid, significant amount of money. We've had, and I've talked, and I'm not giving any trade craft away because these are cases that we've talked about. They've been in that I've had on my podcast. I've reviewed on my podcast, but maybe. There might have been somebody that was operating a cell phone company, back in the day when cell phones were first coming out, and they had lots of mom and pop cell phone companies. Maybe we would go in and talk to that person and convince them to set up a front, with the FBI. And, we're not concerned about their legitimate business. And maybe they spend so much time with us working on our undercover operation that their legitimate business is suffering. Well, then we would pay them. We would pay them almost like a salary in order for them to keep that business running and for us to use it as a front for our undercover activity. So, that's one of those situations. Or maybe it is somebody that's been involved in criminal activity and now they're your confidential source. Just because they are doesn't give them a pass to continue with criminal activity. And so if you're going to ask them to be, your informant, and you're going to tell them they can't do criminal activity, well, how are they supposed to get money? Because the only way they know how to get money is through, doing something that's illegal. And so then you would pay them in exchange for them working with you, or, and providing assistance. You'd pay them.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that's kind of a little bit scary because when I was reading on your website about it, that you're signing a form with the federal government that you cannot commit any crime. So if they catch you committing a crime and you're getting paid by the FBI, like you could seriously get yourself into some hot water, right?
Yeah. And the reason for that is because eventually not all informants are going to testify in court. Some of them are providing you background or historical information. But if you have a source that you expect to testify in court, one of the big questions, the first question a defense attorney is going to ask is, have they committed any crimes? And
Right.
so even though they may have done some in the past, if once they say they're doing something active currently, then their testimony is worthless. And so that's one of the reasons that, they have to sign that agreement that they're not going to be involved in criminal activity. And again, if we're asking them to do that, but we're also expecting them to be in that criminal world and provide information to us, then we have to supplement or subsidize, their livelihood.
hmm So, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about the FBI, beyond the whole thing of like, oh yeah, the FBI just came and took over? Like, I feel like we've talked about that enough, but like, what are the things that people don't think but aren't true? Like, what?
I think probably the one that I see a lot, especially in true crime, is that the FBI can be involved in local murders just on their own. And they don't understand that is the FBI or local law enforcement isn't subordinate to the FBI. There's not a hierarchy and the FBI is on top, and then the local detective, we can tell them what to do. That is so far from the truth. The FBI has their jurisdiction, the local police have their jurisdiction. And if there is a local crime occurring, and as an FBI agent, I walk up and show, my creds, my badge, and say FBI, they're going to say, who cares? Why do you, what do you want? Why are you here? Why do you think you can come in here? Because I have nothing to do with a local murder. There are many, many situations where I've seen, a TV show or a movie and the FBI is involved in a local murder. And during the entire time I'm watching it, I'm thinking, why are they there?
Mhm.
Because it's a local murder. There are situations now when a local police department, because of the FBI's resources and manpower, may invite the FBI in and we do that as a police cooperation courtesy. But if we're not invited in to assist with that murder investigation, we have absolutely no reason and no authority to be there. But they may want to be able to use our lab. They may want to be able to have their potential suspect profiled, by a criminal profiler. There may be electronic surveillance that we could provide. And so we're going to come in and assist. But in almost every situation, if there is somebody found and arrested, they are going to be tried in state court. It is not a federal FBI case. We'll be there to testify and to provide assistance, but it's still a local murder that the FBI has assisted on. When you do see us involved in a murder, it's because it's a murder that has occurred on federal property, such as the case of the, what's her name?
Hey, Criminal Mischief Nation. So fall is in full swing, which means it is the perfect time to refresh your wardrobe. And that's where Quince comes in. Quince has all the elevated essentials for fall. Think 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. Wow. Washable silk tops and skirts. And of course, my go-to during the fall, perfectly tailored denim that you can dress up or down. And at prices, I'm going to be honest, feel a little too good to be true. But here's the thing. Quince partners with ethical, top-tier factories, so there's no middlemen. And then they pass that savings on to us. I recently ordered the most delicious and fun-to-wear black flare-bottom pants, which feel really expensive with just the right amount of stretch and thickness, with a midsection cut that adds a little design extra. And since the wool cashmere sweater I also ordered didn't break the bank, I'm now eyeballing one of their wool coats. Again, the design is just so classic, and the clothes are made with the kind of quality fabric that's built to last at half the price of a designer label. So keep it classic and cozy this fall with long-lasting staples from Quince. Go to quince.com/criminal mischief for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/criminal mischief to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/criminal mischief.
Gabby.
Gabby Petito.
Gabby Petito. Her body and the murder occurred on a federal property. There may be a civilian that is the murderer on a military facility, but it's a civilian. It could be a murder that takes place on the open waters that the FBI might be involved in. It could be on an Indian reservation, which is the FBI has jurisdiction over that. But there was some reason that it is under the FBI's jurisdiction. And those are situations where we might be working a murder case. But again, if it's a local town murder, that is not our case. We may be there testifying and providing assistance, but we are there on behalf and at the invitation of the local police department or the state police or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So what's your take on the profilers? Like, you came in 1982. I know the BSU started in 1972, but you were there to kind of see the rise of that and then how it really took shape. Because in the 80s, that's when serial killers were really, that was in the vernacular. You had a bird's eye view. What was that like?
Yeah, and on my podcast, I probably have done interviews with probably 8 to 10 profilers. And so I really have a good understanding of what they do. And of course, the way they're portrayed in TV shows and movies is totally wrong. I mean, they're not running down dark alleys or going into basements looking for serial killers. They're consultants. Mm-hmm. And so basically they are engaged with investigators, whether they're local police, state police, or FBI agents who are looking at a serial killing or a murder or violent crime or child against children situation that is almost appears to be unsolvable. And so those investigators are looking for additional help. And the profiler is going to get that file, and they're going to go through, the crime scene, the interviews that have been done, the suspects, what was left behind, and they're going to try to, using their analytical skills, they're going to try to see what was missing. What are the connections? They're trying to, again, be consultants providing additional academic level information about what the investigator may continue to do. And so they're not assigned those cases as if they're their cases. They may go out to the location. They may have meetings with the agent and local investigators, but they're consultants providing details and information and suggestions, sometimes even suggestions once you find the perpetrator, who you think is the perpetrator, providing suggestions on what you might say to them or how you might react to them when you go into the room to get that confession. And this is based on the profilers going out to prisons around the country and interviewing serial killers and violent perpetrators, and gathering the information that allows them to be able to, quote unquote, profile somebody based on all of this intelligence and education that they've gathered.
Speaking of like women and the FBI, it's interesting because like John Douglas or Ressler, what's his first name? Robert Ressler. They've gotten, that was the whole Manhunter show. I bring in like these references because it's something that you talk about a lot
Yeah.
But there was another woman who was really and her name is escaping me, but she recently had I think it was on Hulu or a show out about her involvement where she was with them. But
right, that was Anne. Oh God.
Yeah, and she
was a psychiatric nurse.
Yes.
Who was working with them in order to develop that interview survey, that program that they were putting together when they were going out to talk to these serial killers and violent perpetrators around the country. She's the one that helped work side by side with them to develop that questionnaire, and then to help them evaluate the questionnaires once they got back. So yeah, definitely she was actively involved in those early days of the criminal profilers.
And I just think are there a lot of women from your experience that were in the FBI that made huge contributions that I'm so happy she got her show and because she was hugely, like, that was the whole part of the program, was that they saw that she had this process, because I think she was interviewing sexual assault survivors, and then they approached her, to like, hey, I think she could help our department here. Do you feel in your experience that there have been other women who, maybe that their contributions haven't been as elevated as their male counterparts?
I don't know about that, because people love profilers. And so whether they can talk to a male profiler or a woman profiler, and really, I think that the women profilers kind of have a little bit more cachet, because people are just so shocked that you have this woman who is interested in, getting into the minds of a serial killer. And so I know I've talked to at least 3, if not 4, women that were profilers, and like I said, I've done like 8 or 10. So I've interviewed a good percentage of them, but I think it's difficult to become a profiler in the FBI. It's a very, very difficult job to obtain, because there are so many people who came into the FBI. They were motivated to join the FBI because they saw Silence of the Lamb, or they watched the Mindhunter TV series, and they loved to do it. But there's only, at any time, no more than 20 criminal profilers at the BAU in Quantico. And so it's a hard job to get. But we do have also, every office has a person in the office who's kind of like the on-site profiler. They've had some training, and they are the people that kind of work with the locals and making decisions about what cases really may need to be reviewed by the BAU. So, there is that particular position too.
Yeah, now that you're saying that, I interviewed an agent, and his name is escaping me, but he helped with this huge bank robber who would wear the Halloween masks, and he would, I
Oh,
don't,
Ray Carr.
yes, yeah, yeah, exactly. And he was the liaison between the mothership of profilers, and then he had some profiler training.
Right. He was in the Philadelphia division with me. I know Ray very well.
Okay, yeah, he was really fun to talk to. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a
But
good
but
guy.
like what was it like with the women profilers that you interviewed? What were they, was there any commonality between them? Did you in comparison to men, like what did you find?
I'm not sure. I do know that all of them indicated to me that from the very beginning, as they were growing up, they were always fascinated by this macabre, violent, sexual predator thing. They were reading those types of books, early when they were in middle school and high school. So it was always something they were interested in. And they were lucky enough when they got into the FBI. And again, I use the word luck, not in a negative way, for any of the people who make it into profilers, because there's so many people that may have, that experience and advanced degrees, but because the positions are so few of them, it's hard to get. And so it's a little bit of luck. Once you have that skill set, that experience, and that education, then it's a little bit of luck that you are applying at the same time there's an opening. But they just seem to really have that desire to do that type of work. And so that really was fascinating to me, because that's certainly what I certainly wasn't thinking about serial killers when I was in high school. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I've talked about this quite a bit. Like I have this thing with true crime where when I was in high school, I think I read, like, somehow got my hands on the book about Jerry Brudos. It just stuck. The Lust Killer, right? And I just was like, why do I want to read this? And then I put it away for a long time because I really didn't, I just like, this can't be good to put this in my head? But then I realized that I'm interested in true crime because of the stories behind, and then getting back to the human nature and why we do what we do. And it's awful to hear these stories, but I think that you can get some real insights into human behavior. So that's kind of why I am interested in it. But I to your point, I totally get it. I don't think I don't want to say it's normal, but I do think that I think that women like to, I'm going to be gender specific here because I'm a woman, but like we like to figure things out. We like to armchair detect what's going on and to analyze and to understand our world. But I was so fascinated with your story about you get this call out of the blue after you retired about, hey, we think you're so awesome. We want you to consult on our movie. Talk a little bit about what that was like, because that had to have been like so awesome.
Well, let me tell you, the email that came in said consultant on J.J. Abrams project. So I thought, what? Is this another, scam? Because of course we all get those scams. J.J. Abrams TV project. So I open up the email, and yeah, there's this offer, to help them on working on the TV show. And the reason I know it was good is because they didn't tell me much until after I signed the NDA. Promising not to tell anybody about it. So, and then my contract was actually with Warner Brothers, which he had an overall deal with. And so I signed all the paperwork, and next thing I know, I'm on Zoom, talking to J.J. Abrams and LaToya Morgan. And this was back in 2020, when we first started working on the TV show. So I was there from the very beginning, before they even started writing it, because Dusters is the TV show. It's on HBO Max, and it's about the first Black female FBI agent. And although I was not the first Black female FBI agent, that was Sylvia Mathis back in 1976. I came in 6 years later, but I know so much about the FBI because I've, spent my years after retirement, gathering stories about the FBI, that they wanted to talk to me. So, yeah, it was the coolest thing ever, and it was just cool.
That just is bringing tears to my eyes, because I can't imagine that after almost 30 years putting up with so much. I mean, you've glossed over it, but I can only imagine what life was like in the beginning, and
In the
proving
beginning,
yourself,
yeah.
and that's so much extra, being a person of color that you have to go through, and then to be, they're reaching out to you, you know.
It was so cool. And again, because of COVID and the writer's strike and then the actor's strike, the show took a long time to get off the ground. But I got to speak to everyone, not just the writers and the producers, but I spoke to the costume people and the prop people and the set designers. I helped them design how the office space was going to be laid out. It was just so cool to be involved in the project. And I got to be friends with Rachel Hilson, who's the actress. I've got her phone number and email, and we chat. And LaToya Morgan, who was J.J. Abrams' co-writer and co-producer with this. It really was a lifetime experience. And I was so upset, so sad, so angry when the show did not get a second season. But again, they got caught up in the restructuring of HBO and Max. That was all restructured right when the show came out, and the people that had greenlit the show were no longer around, and that they didn't get a second season. But that show, I don't care. The first season is fantastic. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, you should be. It's I haven't watched the whole thing, but I definitely was like, I mean, that was one of the reasons why I saw your post, and I was like, I'm sure it has quite a few stories to tell. Um, is there anything else that we should talk about? I feel like you covered a lot, but I mean, I'm sure I missed something. Is there anything else that you think people would be? I mean, I guess you're being in true crime, sometimes people who are in law enforcement, they don't want to have any, they retire, they don't want to have anything to do with true crime. They don't want to talk about what their career, it gives them nightmares,
Yeah, they want to move on.
They want to move on.
What I say to people is that there are 3 reasons that I really feel that people in law enforcement, especially the FBI, should tell their story. The first one is to contribute to the positive, let me say that. The first one is to contribute to the positive perception of the FBI. I mean, there are so many, untruths and misconceptions out there. And so by telling our story and telling exactly who we are and what we do, is part of our responsibility as retired FBI employees. The other part of this is the intellectual, what's the word I want to use?
Curiosity.
The historical information.
Okay.
Having, that ability for someone to be able to, who might be working a similar case, to listen to how you ran the case, and maybe getting some ideas and some tips on ways that they could also work that case. And so the institutional knowledge, that's what I was trying to say. That's important to record that, because if it's not recorded, somebody is going to have to reinvent that will when you've already done that. And then the third thing is just your own personal legacy. And the truth is that most families of FBI agents and other federal agents and just, law enforcement people in general compartmentalize that, and they don't want to talk about it when they get home, but they've done some great work. And I think it's important, for their own personal legacy to get that recorded. And so I really encourage people, who tell me, I don't like to talk about myself, or I've moved on, explain to them the importance of why they should share their story. And if I could hum back for just a second, I did get the FBI Agents Association is like the union for the FBI agents. And a few years back, because of the podcast and the books that I've written, I got their G-Men Honors Award, where I was flown up to Washington, D.C., got to sit at the table right next to Director Christopher Wray, and got to be the keynote speaker at a beautiful, beautiful gala where I won I was given the award. And there is nothing better than receiving, that type of an award from your peers, and, being told that you're doing great work and being honored for that. And so, I'm going to be celebrating 10 years of my FBI Case File Review podcast. And, I just, it's so important nowadays in the climate that we're having, with people telling conspiracy theories for nonpartisan, a non-political way, just sharing the stories of the FBI and the FBI cases. And I'm very proud of what I've been able to do. It makes me happy.
Well, Jerri, thank you so much for your service. And I'm sure you earned every bit of that award. So, but to your point, like I interviewed Ken Lanning, for the profile.
Yes.
And multiple times, such a giving man with so much experience. And he's like, a lot of us from that era are gone. He's like in his 80s, and now TV shows are calling him up, and, because there's not a lot of them left, And so to your point, the history needs to be told and shared. So I'm glad that, your podcast is probably like has all these stories. It's even kind of more next level than just entertainment. It's literally like what happened and their thoughts on it, and not just like a case report. It's like them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. That's what I like to think of it as, because you're actually not just learning about the investigation, but you're learning how to investigate.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing, and I really, really thank you so much for your time, and it was great to meet you.
Yes, it was nice meeting you too. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Well, I will definitely send you a link when it comes out, and
I will definitely share. I'm a sharer.
Oh, hey, great. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I will talk to you later, I guess. And
all right.
You.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Oh, give me some idea when this is coming out. I'm going to be away for 2 weeks. Is this coming out anytime?
Yeah, it's probably going to come out within the next few weeks.
All right, because I'm leaving on October 24th.
Where are you going?
Thailand.
Wow, this will definitely come out before then. Thailand.
Okay. Yes.
Wow. So do you have to stack up your interviews so that you'll have it?
Yes. Well, no, during the 2 weeks I'm gone, I'm not even going to have any because I don't want to have to think about it. But the one that I'm going to be doing afterwards, I'm going to have to make sure it's all done. So when I get back, I'll have something to post. But for those 2 weeks, I'm not even going to be thinking about.
Oh, how fun.
The podcast.
Great. Is it just, have you been planning it for a long time, or?
Yeah, we go somewhere big every year. So my husband and I, and then I have a daughter that's single. Well, she's not. She's engaged. Her boyfriend usually goes with us, but they don't have kids. I should say childless, who goes with us occasionally too. So, yeah. this should be a good one.
Well, this will definitely be out before October 24th.
Okay, very good.
I'll let you
Just
know.
tag me if you remember, and then I will share.
Okay, great. Awesome. We'll have a good day. Okay.
All right. I'm glad we were able to work this
I
all
know,
out.
me too. Me too. It was definitely worth it. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
From Pie in the Sky Media, Criminal Mischief is an EVO production, recorded live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself, music by Soundstripe. For EVO Creative, I'm Carolyn Ossorio, your writer and host.